Hi, everyone. This is CommerceNext Co-Founder Veronika Sonsev, and I want to welcome you to Conversations with CommerceNext. For those that are new, Conversations with CommerceNext is a video series with marketing leaders in the retail industry. Today, we are joined by Marisa Thalberg, Executive Vice President, Chief Brand and Marketing Officer at Lowe. Marisa recently joined Lowe about a year ago and has made some big moves since joining the company. Under her leadership, Lowe has grown loyalty and market share by focusing on brand-driven marketing. Marisa was named Executive of the Year by Marketing Dive, and Lowe was ranked number 3 on Ad Age's Marketer of the Year list under her leadership. Marisa, congrats on everything you accomplished this year. I'm incredibly excited to have you join us today.
Thank you for having me, and all that is reflective of a team effort, but thank you very much.
There's been a lot that's been accomplished in a short time, so I'm really thrilled to get to sit down with you and talk about some of those initiatives as well as, what's ahead for the year.
Let's do it.
All right. So when you joined Lowe's a year ago, where did you see the biggest opportunities from a marketing perspective?
Well, I think as any new leader does, you come into a new opportunity and you assess, you absorb, you talk to people, you get multivariate inputs in terms of the research that's been done, the business background, consumer perspectives. And so I was really just in the process of piecing that together. And I was not really about 3 weeks into the role when COVID really began to hit. So at this point, I had formulated some hypotheses that I was starting to really try to distill into what I saw as kind of a vision and a plan, and just didn't really have the luxury of time at that point to be completely sequential about how to go after those things. So I had to keep doing those things. And there were some foundational elements that I felt really needed to be in place for marketing as a function within Lowe's and just organizationally. But then we had to really move very quickly to change the way we were communicating and showing up as the world, of course, became so upended. But it also became, just purely through the lens of the brand and the business, a very unique opportunity. The whole world was now at home and focusing on home. And so the relationship between people and their homes was suddenly so heightened, and the role that and responsibility and opportunity we had to play in that became heightened as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, kind of speaking of home, this is a new category for you. You came from a background of beauty and QSR. How did that influence your strategy in the home improvement category? Did it help give you a fresh perspective on the category?
Oh, absolutely. Look, not everyone moves, from dramatically different industries as I have over the past several years. But I think it can be really invigorating. And I did it early in my career too. And even my very, very earliest days in my career, which started in advertising, when, you learn how to be a thinker and a strategist and, get to sort of the fundamentals of what does it mean to really find a connection point or connection points with consumers. And so I've really loved the dynamism of those changes and the opportunity to bring lateral thinking and fresh thinking. But what's really been instrumental is being able to pair my fresh perspective with colleagues within the company with the institutional knowledge, and not only the institutional knowledge of the business and the brand, but just even how to get things done. And I think that can be, in the best of circumstances, a really beautiful alchemy when you combine those two.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're bringing kind of the perspective of your other industries, they're bringing all of their expertise. It is definitely been a year of a lot of change. You mentioned you joined just a few weeks before the start of the pandemic. How did the pandemic change your marketing strategy? That's now the home is center. How did that affect how you're marketing Lowe's?
Well, look, fundamentally, as a big retailer, a big part of the role of marketing, of course, is to drive interest, awareness, preference, and ultimately traffic to our stores and to Lowes.com. And that fundamental responsibility remains unchanged, but the how we did it obviously had to change very quickly. And also there was a real sensitivity in the earliest days, particularly of the pandemic, of not wanting to seem untoward about driving people to stores when, the world was locking down. We didn't know yet exactly what was safe and what wasn't. And yet we also wanted to make it clear that we were an essential retailer for a reason. And for example, if you had a broken hot water heater, you needed to know that we were there and available and could service you. And we were really at the forefront, whether people fully know this part or not, of institutionalizing the practices in our stores, whether it was the plexiglass dividers, and I would believe we were really among the first to do that, the floor decal. So we had to figure it out earlier than most of what were these new protocols from a safety standpoint. But then just in terms of how we talk to our consumers, it was just an immediate, and with very limited time under my belt, I had to go off of what I already had assessed and what I knew of my own instincts about, in a moment of crisis, how does a brand like ours show up? And trying to do my best to channel what I felt was Lowe's, and really even connecting with the heritage of the brand and the fact that this is a company as well as a brand that really actually does, in some ways, its finest moments are showing up in times of crisis. If you look at our associates during major weather events and natural disasters, where we have our Blue Bucket Brigades, and our associates just are unbelievable for the communities. And that was actually very, very helpful, because I wasn't inventing something that would feel invented. I was drawing on the roots of what was already real to Lowe's and the culture of our associates, and just drawing a connection that, hey, this is what we've always done and this is what we're doing right now. And from a consumer standpoint, definitely pulling all the way back on promotionality and traditional retail marketing, and just starting more on connecting people to home and the immediately changing nature of home. And that sort of segued into how we were talking about the adapting nature of home at that point, where one of our first spots was recognizing, which now feels like, yeah, we all know this, but living rooms were becoming offices and garages were becoming home gyms. But it was such a instant new truth to mine and to put Lowe's into that piece of changing culture, and in I think a very thoughtful and positive way. Believe those early moves were done with some sure footing that enabled us to keep proceeding from there.
Yeah, that's really, your campaigns really kind of hit an emotional chord. And, it seemed like it was particularly your Build Thanks campaign, your Backyard Weddings campaign with Bobby Burke, your holiday cake campaign, that emotional connection seemed like it was new for Lowe's. Can you talk about that shift? Is it just because of the pandemic, or was it really kind of your goal to shift the brand to have more of that emotional connection with consumers?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think that it was overt as saying, I want to shift to a more emotional connection. And I also want to point out that first of all, I love that you noted those things, and I'm really proud of those. But when you're marketing a brand and a business that's this massive, what I really had to make sure is all the different cylinders or layers of our marketing calendar, which we kind of had to construct anew, that all of them are working. So you can do that here while you're also firing on your performance media, or thinking differently about different audiences or different messages that we want to get across. So that, what you're pulling out, I just want to know, it only represents one part of what we've been doing through this time. But yeah, absolutely. I think we're storytellers, and finding ways to just make sure that as the zeitgeist was changing so quickly, and as people's needs and wants and behaviors were changing, that we were plugging into that in the right way for Lowe's. And that's the key. It had to be right for Lowe's. And we've still been, I think, fine-tuning what that is, and we'll continue to do so. But I think all of those examples you give are really nice examples.
Awesome. So it wasn't really kind of replacing the core elements of the marketing. It was more just adding that kind of emotional core to it, but still keeping kind of the core large kind of marketing strategies in place.
think that's probably a fair way of saying it, and just perhaps getting a little bit more strategically precise about the roles and functions of the different parts of our marketing programs and how to create these different layers. And then, also think about, we have really, in simplest terms, two very different types of audiences. It's our general audience, we call it the DIY consumer, but we also have a professional consumer. And one of our big goals was making sure that, we know we're an underdog with that audience, but we really wanted to make a commitment, especially to maybe some of the smaller pros who, you think about, well, what's in their minds and hearts? What are they worried about? And as everything was sort of collapsing in March and April, it's like, we just help them keep them working. Like, let's get to the fundamentals and foment possibilities for new loyalty in the process. So that's the other really interesting thing about a business like Lowe's, is thinking about these two really different types of audiences and doing right by them both. And they can be wildly different, but also still feeling like it makes sense under this one banner that is the Lowe's brand.
And you make a really great point about kind of different segments of customers and how those have different needs. So I want to kind of shift the conversation a little bit to consumer insights. What role do consumer insights play into this whole process of understanding your customers and making sure you're marketing the right message to them?
It's really interesting, Veronika, because when I think of some of my early experiences that shaped my career, I went from, one extreme of classic packaged goods, where it's like these constant consumer insights, checking back with the consumer. And then I was in luxury, working with some of the greatest fashion designers in the world on their beauty licenses. And, there was a belief that the consumer doesn't tell me what to think, I tell them what to think. And it became very interesting to have gotten both of those perspectives early in my career, because I think what it shaped in me was a desire to toggle between both. So I absolutely believe in consumer insights, and I love finding the nuggets, like the real, what can I do with that? Where are people's minds, hearts? Where might we imagine they're going? But I also think that ultimately, as marketers, consumers can't tell you what to do. And that's where creativity comes in. And that's where connecting the dots in new, fresh ways comes in. So ultimately, I love insights as insights and as guides and as ways to unlock ideas. But I don't think it goes all the way to that constant, I'm going to wait until the consumer tells me what to do, because, to quote the classic Henry Ford line, if I had asked them, they would have told me to build a better horse. So it's really that combination that I think is the right way for marketers to rely on them and leverage the benefits of them, but still also have vision and intuition and creativity.
Yeah. Well, you've done some kind of new things this year, particularly with New York Fashion Week and helping the designers set up their runways. That probably, that was new for Lowe's. So how do you know?
Research.
That was just your intuition. We're going to try it and see if the consumers really kind of gravitate towards that, because it seemed like that was somewhat, designed to open people's eyes to some of the non-DIY, but some of the finished goods that Lowe's has that will help you make your home more comfortable.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was amazed. And I always believe in trying to keep a little bit of those fresh newcomer eyes you have when you start a new job and a new business, because then you're an insider and you forget. But one of my early epiphany moments was, I knew I was going to have this new office in North Carolina. And I asked if I could redecorate it, but I said I only want to decorate it with things from Lowe's. So again, this was before the pandemic. So I'm imagining all different media people coming, and I wanted them to see kind of the best of what we offer that you might surprise you. And so that's what I did. And it really gave me a chance to shop the website and experience it and think about what the customers experience anyway. To this day, I mean, not that many people have been walking in my office the past few months. I'm not even there that often, but when I am, I mean, it's a surprise. We have beautiful furniture and decor and accessories. And I realize that that's just an opportunity, like and we've been expanding it tremendously. So I did like the idea of opening people's eyes. And in this case, a little bit more of a woman target, but of course, dual, to the possibilities of dressing your home, not just building and project based. But it also, the New York Fashion Week idea, I mean, this is, again, just connecting dots with what exists in culture. And I was talking to a colleague who had a big responsibility for producing the, New York Fashion Week, was bemoaning a bit, how are we going to pull this off just off with virtual shows? And I just started thinking about, well, where does couture fashion even fit right now in the zeitgeist when people are so focused on their homes? And I was like, I actually think it would be really modern, really relevant for the moment to connect the idea of fashion to home. So it just came out of a conversation and connecting dots and thinking, wow, like really right now, a lot of people are thinking about self-expression through the lens of their homes and where they want to spend their time and their money. And what if we could integrate those two perspectives more? And of course, in the course of doing that, help showcase a bit of the surprise of what Lowe's can offer. And that's how that idea was born. And then, with gratitude to a team that, some people loved it. Some people thought it was crazy. Some people might have thought it was both, but you got to take those leaps sometimes, so long as they're strategic and not gratuitous. And sometimes when you do something that seems a little flashy, I'm very, very mindful. I don't like gimmicks. Those things always are purposeful in my mind, or they don't get done. But it was hard work because it was different. It was different than anything the organization was wired to do. But I think it really created a special moment for us, and the first of many to come.
Yeah. And I think you almost had a special opportunity because it wasn't so high fashion, so couture. People are much more grounded in what they're thinking about buying, that it connected with Lowe's. If it was high fashion and couture, it would be like a disjointed experience.
Well, and it was just such a nice win-win to be able to really help the designers with whom we worked, who are wonderful. And a couple of them have really become good friends in the process. Jason Wu, Rebecca Minkoff. We also worked with Christian Siriano, and to enable them to still produce something really special. And, to use everything from the lumber that we have for the runways to our garden centers to make Jason's, Tulum fantasy come to life. I mean, so many different elements of that. And then also have them curate on our website what were sort of their favorites within Lowe. So it just, it's an example of where a partnership can really be symbiotic and enable two parties to do something together that they couldn't do on their own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to talk about digital for a minute because, one of the unique aspects of your background is that you have been grounded in digital throughout your career. How has that impacted your marketing strategy at Lowe's?
Well, it's interesting. I want to just say something about that because for at least a decade or so, I was very much seen as a digital marketer, a digital pioneer, and I loved and embraced that. But, the part that always sat a little funny inside me, I don't know if it was imposter syndrome, but I think it was actually something bigger than that, which is I felt that the accent in the phrase digital marketer was all on digital. And what I realized towards the end of my tenure at the Estee Lauder companies was the accent for me was always on marketer. And for some people, it might be different. But for me, the point was the world was profoundly changing. And I was just seeing it maybe a little bit sooner than some others. And so it became an imperative to teach myself and build my own skill set, and then figure out how to incorporate that into some very traditional brands and bring them up to date. And so that's how I became this big digital marketer. But the reality was I was a marketer that was just adapting, as marketers need to the ways in which the world was changing. So fast forward to answer your question, what does that mean to now is I'm no longer just advocating for digital. I just look at the totality of channel opportunities, and in a way I'm agnostic. It's just what are the ways in which we can best reach the consumers we want to reach today and how. But that early proficiency, I think, has been a real advantage. And I reminisce on those early days. Like it's crazy to look back on it. I think the other thing that I learned through those experiences is what it takes to be a change agent. And it's hard. It's hard work because change is scary, especially when you're the one initiating change on others. And so I learned probably more about that than anything through those experiences, which have been very valuable to take into new opportunities.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you can also see it kind of in the fact that on take your Fashion Week example, you know, the designers curated a collection on Lowe's.com. Like they had that digital connection. It wasn't just about elevating the brand and making consumers aware of the breadth of the assortment at Lowe's, but it also had this digital translation that made it easy to shop some of that assortment as well.
Yeah, and obviously there's a big part of digital marketing that's been just an absolute, you know, workhorse with regards to, you know, being able to really get highly productive ROI based online sales. And, you know, having been early days in that, I think that's been incredibly useful. But again, now I can look at it in totality and take that expertise I had early in my career, but also take a quote brand perspective. And now the real task is how do you pull it all together?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're doing a really great job with that. We talked a lot about what you've done over the last year. I would love to just get a sneak peek of what's next from a marketing perspective and where you see some of the opportunities in the coming year.
Well, I'm going to share with you something really special that is like, this is the very beginning of announcing this. And 2021 happens to be a real milestone year for Lowe's. It happens to be our 100th birthday. And I bet that, along with maybe not realizing all the things we sell, that's also, I think, a surprise to a lot of people. I personally had no idea until I joined the company that Lowe's was approaching being 100 years old. And very few companies make it to a centennial mark. So in and of itself, it's an accomplishment. But we thought about, gosh, what do we do to mark this? We did not want it to be a self-congratulatory moment or a history moment. We wanted it to be a moment to almost sort of set the next chapter in a really meaningful way and frankly give back to this country out of which Lowe's was born as a small business 100 years ago. And so what we're doing is recommitting to how do we help people make homes better for all. And in so doing, we're announcing our most ambitious initiative maybe ever, which is that we are going to help improve 100 corners of the country, 100 hometowns this year. And we're not just picking them. We're actually inviting people from all over the country to nominate their little corner, their little neighborhood, whether it's a community center, a park, something in their hometown that's really in need, and tell us why. And then later this summer into the fall, we're going to do 100 hometown projects. It's epic. And to me, that's how you celebrate a birthday. We're going to really give back and remind ourselves what we're all about and get ourselves ready to keep doing this for the next 100 years.
Wow. What a wonderful project. That like touched my heart. It's just such a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing what you've been up to. This has been a really great discussion, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.